You won't believe what happened when the HOA cops showed up at my door trying to take my shotguns. Yeah, you heard that right. They actually came knocking, demanding I hand over my firearms. But here's the twist. They had no idea I'm federally protected. What started as a simple neighborhood dispute quickly turned into something way bigger than I ever imagined. The stakes got high, tempers flared, and now those same HOA officers are facing a serious trial because of it. I want you to picture this. It's a normal day, and suddenly there's this unexpected confrontation. The HOA, usually just a group dealing with lawn rules and parking, decided to take things to a whole new level. They showed up with authority, but didn't realize I had legal protections backing me up, protections that they clearly weren't prepared for. As the tension built, it became clear this wasn't just about shotguns or HOA bylaws anymore. It was about rights, power, and who really holds control in a community. Throughout this story, you'll meet the people involved, the HOA officers who thought they could enforce their own rules without consequence, and me, someone who knows the law and isn't afraid to stand my ground. What happens when ordinary neighborhood rules clash with federal protections? How far will those HOA cops go when they realize they're in over their heads? I'm about to take you through the whole ordeal, from the first knock on the door to the legal battles that followed. But trust me, this story isn't over yet. There's a lot at stake, and what happened next will blow your mind. Stay tuned, because you won't want to miss the next part where everything comes to a head and the real fight begins. So here's how it all started. I've lived in this neighborhood for years, and honestly, it's been pretty peaceful. The HOA rules were mostly just about keeping the place tidy. No loud parties, no junk in the yard, that kind of stuff. I never thought the HOA would step into something as serious as firearm ownership. But apparently, they had been getting complaints from a few neighbors about the shotguns I keep for home defense and hobby shooting. That's when things started to get complicated. The HOA board sent me several notices, trying to pressure me into giving up my firearms, claiming they violated some community safety rules. At first, I tried to reason with them, explaining my rights as a law-abiding gun owner protected under federal laws. But they didn't want to hear it. That's when they decided to send what I can only describe as HOA cops, enforcement officers hired by the association, to my house. They showed up demanding to confiscate my shotguns, acting like they had the authority to do so. But they had no idea I was federally protected under laws like the Gun Control Act and other regulations that make it clear they have no jurisdiction over my firearms. When I told them this, things got heated fast. The HOA cops weren't used to being challenged. They thought they could push me around like some homeowner who'd just backed down. But I wasn't about to let that happen. I stood firm, knowing I had the law on my side. I even had documents ready, proving my rights and federal protections. But they kept insisting, and things escalated to the point where they threatened to take legal action against me if I didn't comply. What none of us expected was how far this would go. The HOA's overreach ended up triggering an investigation that put those enforcement officers under scrutiny, and now they're facing serious charges. It's wild to think that something that started as a neighborhood dispute turned into a legal battle with real consequences for those who tried to take my rights away. But the story doesn't end here. There's more to uncover about what really happened behind the scenes and who might be pulling the strings in this whole mess. Stick around, because the next part will dive deeper into the fallout and the unexpected twists that followed. What really added fuel to the fire was how divided the neighborhood became after the HOA cops showed up. Some neighbors supported the HOA's push to take the shotguns, worried about community safety and the idea of guns in the neighborhood. Others stood by me, knowing that what the HOA was doing crossed a serious line. Suddenly, it wasn't just about me or my firearms. It was about bigger questions of rights, control, and how far an HOA can actually go. One neighbor, who used to be friendly, started spreading rumors that I was dangerous or breaking some hidden laws. That made things even harder. I realized this wasn't just a legal battle, it was personal. The HOA's attempts to take my shotguns opened up a whole mess of old resentments and fears people have been holding back. The HOA officers, thinking they were just doing their job, had stepped right into the middle of a community fight they didn't fully understand. On the flip side, I began digging into the background of these HOA enforcement officers. Turns out, some of them didn't have proper training or clear authority. They were hired by the HOA with vague guidelines, which made their aggressive approach even more questionable. This raised another issue. How much power should these private enforcers really have? And what happens when they start acting like law enforcement without the legal right? Then there's the legal side. My federal protections over gun ownership meant the HOA's orders weren't just wrong, they were illegal. But fighting this meant stepping into a complicated world of laws, regulations, and court battles. The HOA tried to paint me as a troublemaker, while I was fighting to protect my rights and my reputation. Each day, new documents came in, lawyers talked strategy, and tensions rose as the trial date loomed. Meanwhile, the HOA cops themselves started feeling the pressure. Facing trial wasn't just about the guns anymore. It was about accountability and consequences for overstepping their role. Some of them tried to backtrack or shift blame, making things even messier. But the truth was out, and it was clear this story was far from over. There's more to this than just shotguns and HOA rules. It's a story about standing up when others try to push you around, about knowing your rights, and about how quickly things can spiral when fear and authority collide. The next chapter is coming, and it's going to reveal even deeper layers behind this neighborhood showdown. You won't want to miss what happens next. As the trial date drew closer, the tension in the neighborhood was almost unbearable. Every conversation felt charged, like something big was about to explode. The HOA board kept pushing their narrative, trying to paint me as someone who ignored the community's safety concerns. Meanwhile, I was preparing for the biggest fight of my life, not just to protect my shotguns, but to stand up for my rights and make sure no one else gets bullied like this. The HOA cops, once so confident, started showing cracks. Their stories didn't line up, and their overreach was becoming clear to everyone following the case. Some neighbors who had been quiet suddenly spoke up, questioning how much power these enforcement officers really should have. The community was divided, but the doubt about the HOA's actions was growing fast. On my side, things weren't easy either. The legal battle was draining, emotionally and financially. I had to keep my cool, even when things felt unfair or overwhelming. Every time I thought I had a handle on the situation, a new twist popped up. There were secret meetings, rumors about behind-the-scenes deals, and even hints that some HOA members might have been trying to hide information. It felt like a chess game, with every move more risky than the last. One night, after a particularly heated HOA meeting, I got a call from an unexpected source, someone inside the HOA who wanted to talk but needed to stay anonymous. They hinted at evidence that could change everything but warned me to be careful. Suddenly, this was more than just a legal dispute. It was becoming a battle over truth, power, and control. The pressure was mounting on all sides. The HOA cops knew the trial could ruin their careers, while I knew this fight would decide more than just the fate of my shotguns. It was about standing up against intimidation and making sure rights are respected, no matter what. Now, everything is on the line. The courtroom is set, the players are ready, and the tension has never been higher. What happens next could change everything, for me, for the HOA, and for the entire neighborhood. The next part of this story will bring us to the edge of that breaking point. Are you ready? Just when I thought things couldn't get any more intense, that anonymous tip turned into a game changer, and not in a good way for the HOA. As I started digging into what this insider hinted at, I uncovered something that completely flipped the entire story on its head. It wasn't just about them overstepping with my shotguns anymore. There were deeper, more troubling issues buried under the surface, things the HOA desperately wanted to keep hidden. Apparently, some of the HOA board members had been involved in questionable financial dealings, and the enforcement officer's aggressive behavior might have been a smokescreen to distract from those problems. Suddenly, this wasn't just a fight about gun rights and federal protection. It was about corruption, cover-ups, and power struggles inside the neighborhood leadership. The stakes went from high to explosive overnight. I shared this new information with my legal team, knowing it could shift the trial in a way no one expected. But it also made me realize just how risky this battle had become. The people behind the HOA weren't just going to back down quietly. If they were willing to send enforcement officers to try and take my firearms, what else were they willing to do to protect their secrets? As word of this potential scandal started leaking, the neighborhood grew even more divided. Some neighbors who had supported the HOA began questioning their loyalty. Others doubled down, defending the board and accusing me of stirring up trouble. The tension wasn't just legal anymore, it was personal, emotional, and raw. Meanwhile, the HOA cops who had come after me started showing signs of real stress. I noticed some of them avoiding contact, and rumors spread that internal investigations were underway. It was clear they were caught in the middle of something bigger than just enforcing HOA rules. Now, with the trial approaching, the entire situation felt like a powder keg. Every new discovery raised the stakes higher, not just for me, but for everyone involved. The question wasn't just if I would win the fight over my shotguns, but how deep the mess really went, and what consequences were coming for those who thought they could take advantage of the system. The next chapter is about to reveal all the pressure points, and trust me, it's about to get even more intense. The day of the trial finally arrived, and the tension in the courtroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every eye was on me and the HOA officers, the very people who had tried to take my shotguns and, unknowingly, challenged federal law. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer laid out the facts, the clear federal protections I had, the HOA's lack of authority over firearms, and the questionable behavior of those enforcement officers. But what really shook the room was the evidence of the HOA board's financial misconduct that had come to light. It was like peeling back a layer, exposing how far the board had gone to cover up their mistakes by trying to silence me. As witnesses testified, including some neighbors who had switched sides, the story became clearer. The HOA officers hadn't just overstepped, they had been used as pawns in a bigger scheme to distract from the board's corruption. The courtroom was on edge as the truth unraveled, and the judge made it clear that HOA's actions were not only illegal but dangerous. In the end, the HOA officers were held accountable for their unlawful attempts to seize my firearms, and the board faced serious consequences for their misdeeds. It was a victory not just for me, but for the whole community, a reminder that no one is above the law and rights matter. But just when I thought it was over, the final twist hit hard. During the closing statements, my lawyer dropped a bombshell. There was a second group operating behind the scenes, quietly influencing the HOA board and orchestrating much of the chaos. Someone with even more power and a hidden agenda. The trial wasn't just about local HOA drama anymore, it was just the tip of the iceberg. The courtroom erupted in whispers, and the judge promised to investigate further. What started as a fight over shotguns and HOA rules had opened a door to something much bigger. As I walked out, I realized this story was far from finished. The real battle, uncovering who was really pulling the strings, was just beginning. And trust me, you're going to want to stay tuned for what's coming next. After the trial, things in the neighborhood slowly started to calm down, but the impact of everything that happened stayed with me, and with everyone involved. The HOA officers who tried to take my shotguns faced consequences, and the corrupt board members were removed. It was a win for my rights, for federal protections, and for anyone who's ever felt pushed around by an overreaching authority. The community realized how important it is to know your rights and stand up for them, no matter how small the fight might seem at first. The rumors about the second group behind the scenes kept everyone talking. Investigations continued quietly, but the main thing was clear. Power can be abused in ways you don't expect, even in a neighborhood where you think everyone just wants to get along. That lesson stuck with me, And I hope it does with you too. Sometimes the people you trust the most aren't always who they seem to be, and being informed and ready to defend yourself is more important than ever.